Good morning, Ramona.
Good morning, Bree. How are you this morning?
Good. Happy New Year.
New Year to you too. 2024. Wow, it came fast, didn't it?
It did. And it started off with it's only a few days in and it's starting off with a bang for sure.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree. I think it's going to be exciting. I think it's going to be exciting to see what this year brings, especially in healthcare. Because I think, as you know, healthcare is going through a lot of changes very rapidly. And so I think for organizations and nursing to get on top of what those changes are to make the most sense for both those that are giving care and receiving care is something that we really need to meet coming this year.
I love that because that's not been the New Year message for, 2020 was so crushing. 21 and 22 for innovation, for even looking past just these short-term goals. The conversation at the table was not this, but I'm hearing this hope and aspiration for 2024. I feel it too.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to hear you say, the speed, something about the speed of transformation, which isn't typical in healthcare, right? I mean, typical in my mind is a slow moving engine. And I feel there's a catalyst moving us into 2024.
Well, I think so. We're 4 years post pandemic, but we're still rapidly learning
Wow.
those lessons. And we're still in the midst of understanding what the effects are of the pandemic.
Right.
I looked at the numbers and see, the COVID numbers, while the deaths aren't there, we're starting to see increase admissions from that and how it changes lives. Even personally, we had to kind of switch around our holiday because COVID went around in our family. I mean, so it's
Yes.
just I think people want to say it's over, but we really still need to learn how to adapt to it being there and what it means. And I think that's interesting and lots of lessons. I think COVID is what propelled us to think differently in healthcare. It really caused us to really adapt innovation at a quicker level than we ever had before. And I'd like to keep that momentum. I think it's important to keep the momentum going.
Do you think we can do it?
I think we have to, because I think
Yeah.
that we're faced with a new generation that says things are different for us. We want our voices to be heard and what we need. It's not about us. It's not just about the employer anymore. It is about the employee and what we need to be able to do what we think is best in this awesome profession that we call nursing. Yeah.
Yeah. You've cultivated this career as a leader of nursing information or nursing innovation and transformation. I'm sad to hear about your retirement. I have a feeling that it's retirement. But a lot of nurses, I agree. I'm excited for our next generation of nursing. I think we need to stop the turnover. I think we need to somehow foster the people joining our profession. And I think too I get a lot of questions on how did I get from, kidney and liver transplant to Epic and then Nurse Disrupted. I wonder too, I think your career is exciting. And I think that what you've done for our industry is absolutely transformational. And I wonder if you have any words in 2024 for people looking at their nursing career and saying, what is the next? How do I get from, bedside or traditional nursing to the type of nursing you and I talk about in regards to innovation, leadership, and helping people to see that vision?
I always smile when people said, how did you become VP of Nursing Transformation and Innovation? What was your track? And it was not traditional. I wasn't, I was a CNO for many years, and the way I got to be a CNO wasn't traditional. So when telling my story, I said, I'm a med-surg nurse. That's what I started out in, is med-surg. And I wanted to share. And so I felt that nursing for me was a calling and a cause. It was about me being able to give care to those who needed care in whatever setting. And so I think that I always noticed what did we need to do to make things better? And I would voice, and I was lucky enough to be able to voice that to people who would be able to hear that voice and then say, hey, you're doing such a good job of articulating what's needed. Join this committee, do this, do that. And I was promoted from within. I think I was promoted because I was just a faithful translator, able to listen to what the patient said that they needed, to listen to the voices of my colleagues around me, and then notice that we needed to create the system to promote those things. And that's, I think, of how I got into leadership movements, is just trying to create the systems. The quality movement was beginning in the late 80s and early 90s. And I got on board with that, where people really were saying it's not about individuals that are responsible, but it's creating the systems to let individuals have that synergy and energy to create a world that would be better for both those giving care and receiving care in the broadest sense. Yeah. And those giving care aren't just nurses, and those receiving care aren't just patients. I mean, so it really was to extend that out from, the patient to the patient's family, to the community, to, and I think that as I grew in my leadership ability, is being able to see those different worlds and trying to impact those bigger worlds. So even though I was the VP of Nursing Transformation and Innovation, and looking at whole system changes, huge system changes in many communities, it all starts with the patient and hearing that patient's voice and hearing that nurse and that nurse's voice.
I like how you add hearing the nurse's voice, that the way that we're nurturing. And I also want to call out a second thing that you said, and that I absolutely believe in, is that in the profession of nursing, in the science and the discipline and the practice of nursing, there is the caring component, the human component. There's been hot debate over the years too, in regards to, balancing the angel and the heart with the science, and the ambition. And I think we can have it both. I think of when I chose nursing, it was, do I go to med school? I loved computers. Do I go to computer science? On nursing, I thought of also a deep drive to help people. And that I'm with you, or at least I was hearing that I think we have a similar drive and calling in that, where it was like, hey, this is a science and discipline by which caring and humanity is at the center. And I think that that's still true. I really do.
Yeah, I think that people think that caring is a soft science, and caring in the way that I mean is absolutely a hard science. You have to have all the facts. You have to be competent in that caring, and you have to know how to apply it, both on the individual level, on the family level, on the community level. So you have to know those hard facts. I mean, nurses, it's a hard profession, because you are being asked to put a lot of different things together. When we started, you were talking about your physical health. It was about your emotional health. It was about your social health. It was about your spiritual health. And I think all those things are still true. And now it's even about your financial health. So nurses have to have a virtual encyclopedia of information to be able to take care of that patient, because they have to put all those things together to make a difference for what that patient is experiencing. And it's balancing the science of caring with that human heart of caring, and understanding that individual too. So and bringing those all together, and nurse, that takes a tremendous amount of information, which is why I'm excited about what you do, because you bring ways to get information, people to get different information from right there at that nurse's access. And I think that that's tremendously important, because it is so hard to be able to have all of that at your fingertips, which we are asking our young nurses to be able to do.
And I think of our careers in providing direct patient care as our building blocks. Mm-hmm. I think every day when I look at technology, software, and the way that we build the practice and the reality that you're talking about, where nurses put motion within motion and do so many things simultaneously, and thinking of the practice and the way that technology needs to be designed in that context. I think that 2024 can and will bring a nursing framed design as opposed to just a physician led design. Not to get any deep water there, but well, with that, we have your 2024 prediction that the pace of innovation must continue, that it can continue. Any thoughts for our nurses coming into 2024, and either a prediction or thoughts as we kind of embark on this year?
I think as I look back, I had the fortune of having a young nurse. I have a niece that just graduated. This is a brand new nurse, and is able to come home and tell her stories of what happened. She works night shift. I mean, so it's a typical trajectory of a brand new nurse. She works night shift on a busy med surge floor. They are short staff and they have sick patients. And so she has all these stories and to debrief. And so she comes, and she also has a fortune that she has an aunt that is a nurse, me, and her mother is a nurse. But
Oh,
and
wow.
she yeah, so but she comes and tells us these stories. And both Monica is the name of my sister. Both Monica and I listen and then tell our stories. And that is what's needed. And you see what she learned from hearing our stories and our lessons learned and how to apply that. And that is what I think is really missing, is a way for nurses to get that story. And that is why I am so excited about Nurse Disruptive, because you can bring that nurse right into that room at that time to see the story that that nurse is going through and to share their stories and increase that experience and that help, which I think is what is desperately needed, that support. There's a turnover. There's going to be a shortage, and we've got to figure out an avenue of sharing those stories. That's how I learned. That's probably how you learned from your mentors. And one of the results of the pandemic is that there's not a lot of stories there in real time because all those people are new. And so I think this is about sharing our stories, and that is the science, the art, and everything around that, and passing that on to that new generation so that they can then pass it on.
I love that. Now, you and I could talk about this forever. And I think I want to invite you back on. I want to have another conversation about the stories. Because just in wrapping this up, when I came home, I remember being a new nurse and coming home and sitting at the dinner table and not being able to talk about it. Mm-hmm. Because it is, when you code a patient and it doesn't go well, when there's the family that is, so escalated. I remember, coming to the table and starting to talk about it and watching the faces of, my family and friends around me. And it's like, oh, and I got goosebumps when you talked about sharing the story, having that place, not only for your niece, but maybe that's the place that we need to make for the community at large, for people to be able to comfortably tell those stories, because I agree, there's so much to that. So now you have me thinking. Now I'm really excited for 2024.
Example of the last story we shared. My niece came back from night shift saying that she had a patient. She was doing the assessment. She knew that something wasn't quite right, but she couldn't quite figure out what it was. And I related to her. I said, "Gosh, I remember having that experience too." And I calling the doctor, and the doctor was having a hard time listening to what I was saying because I wasn't being as descriptive as he wanted me to be. And then I thought, who could I get to help me? So I called an ICU nurse, and an ICU nurse came down and was able to see exactly what was going on and was able to be that translator. And my niece said, "I never thought about using an ICU. I'm a med surg nurse. I never thought about using an ICU nurse and having her help me translate that story or give that story." And I was like, yeah. So I'm thinking, when she gets into trouble, she now thinks, I have colleagues. It's not just my colleagues that are around me. I have colleagues in the hospital that I can call on. And you and I know that ICUs are busy. So if there's technology can help connect that to get that ICU nurse in the room without that ICU nurse having to leave her unit, how powerful that is in building connections and building relationships and ultimately getting to the needs of the patient.
Yeah, that's incredible.
It really was, because as I was sharing that story and to see her make that connection to say, I never thought that I could go to my peer and a peer could help help me because I can be more vulnerable. It's scary to talk to a physician, and especially if your language, you haven't learned the language, you haven't been talking that
Right.
language long. And that ICU nurse has been talking that. So she was able to be that translator very easy and to help both the nurse, that new nurse, and that patient get what they need, and the physician, because he wanted to help, or he or she, I don't know, wanted to help, but they just were not able to connect and to bring that all together so that they could all communicate and connect for the greater good. I think is what it was exciting.
I love that. Maybe 2024 is that nursing connection. I mean,
Yeah.
in our offices, we talk about, putting the human back in the technology, but I agree that community, that peer support, that just culture of knowing that someone can pick up the phone and you can answer. We know things are wildly busy. We know plates are full, but I think that if any one of us got a call, that we are there for each other, and that we could build a stronger reality for that. My mind is going. We're gonna continue this thought into the new year. I just love it. Ramona, thank you so much.
You are so
I love talking to you. Yeah. And we'll talk again really soon.
okay. Great. Thank you so much. There's nothing more than that I loved is to talk about what it is that we do, Bree, you and I, in that in helping that patient and making a difference, and how we can do it better. So that's exciting, and getting that energy and synergy around that. So thank you very much for inviting me to speak. It's been my pleasure.